Simon Gruber. Hey everybody. So here's part 3 of my Big Daddy Die Hard review series. Die Hard with a Vengeance. This one was directed by John McTiernan. He came back after Rennie had directed Die Hard 2, so we got some more John McTiernan going on. And John McClane is back, no Sergeant Al this time. But we did get Zeus, Samuel L. Jackson. Love Samuel L. Jackson. And they go up against Simon Gruber, played by Jeremy Irons, which is Han Gruber's brother. And I like Jeremy Irons. I think he did a great job as the bad guy. He doesn't really look like Alan Rickman, but, you know, whatever. I'll just suspend belief that they're brothers. It's all good. Now, how should you start out an action movie? Well, why don't you blow something up and talk to the terrorist in the first 3 minutes? I mean, you get straight to the story. The script was good enough to create the characterization we needed as they experienced what was going on. So there was really no need for long scenes of exposition in the beginning of the movie. John McClane was already established and set up. The world was already established and set up. And so you didn't really need to do too much exposition in the beginning to set everything up. You have a bunch of new characters, but in those first 3 minutes you get a really good idea of who is who and what they're doing there. The quick dialogue and back and forth to everybody in that room in the police office was really great for all the characterization we needed to begin with, to start out with. And that's really good for an action movie, to keep things moving quickly and pace, you know. The first thing Simon had him do was totally messed up. But it really does set the tone of what the bad guy character is. You know, it sets him up very well, very quickly by making him do something that messed up. If you don't know what I mean, go watch the movie. I am not comfortable saying it. He uses the story point that Simon is Han Gruber's brother as a smart way of distracting everyone from the gold reserve heist, which is a much smarter storyline than Die Hard 2. Even though it's too complicated for the entire heist with the riddles and everything to work in real life, it's fun to watch. And that's why I like it more than Die Hard 2, is it was a much more fun movie to me. But the FBI agent that kept putting his glasses in his mouth, oh my God, is that disgusting. That was so gross, and it was distracting from the scene because I couldn't stop watching him do it and cringe. But anyway, whatever. A couple of small things that I really liked. When they had to get downtown within 30 minutes, and the Samuel L. Jackson, Zeus, he said, "I used to be a taxi driver. The quickest way is this way, down 9th." And John just turns the car around and he's going pretty much the opposite direction. And Zeus is like, "I told you the fastest way." And John's like, "No, the fastest way is through the park." And they get to Central Park, and Zeus is like, "I told you Park Drive was always packed at this time." I didn't say Park Drive. I said through the park. I mean, come on. Everybody would want to do that. Don't you want to drive through the park reckless like that? Of course you do. So that was just fun. And the other one was, how many of you remember payphones? I'm totally showing my age right now. I used to use payphones. And those cell phones they had, those mid-90s cell phones, those bricks. I mean, those things were pretty much indestructible, right? So there were a lot of scenes with Samuel Jackson yelling, and Samuel Jackson yelling just makes me happy. I want him to voice all of my frustrations and anger whenever I get mad. I want Samuel Jackson's voice to boom out from behind me. And the train explosion in that one scene with the payphone and Samuel Jackson's yelling at the cop. When the train explosion happens and it all comes around the inside and sliding through the terminal, that looked great. I mean, that's a hard stunt to do even today. I mean, that was a really difficult stunt. But they did it practically, and it looked awesome. Now, they didn't do it on large scale practically. Or yeah, they did. But it just looks so much better than any CGI. Always do practical effects if you can. Even if it's hard, always do them. And safe, if you can do them safe. If you can't do them safely, then you have to do CGI. But please try and do practical, safe effects, because they always look better. And one of the riddles, my favorite riddle was the water riddle at the elephant fountain, where you had a 5-gallon jug and a 3-gallon jug, and you had to make 4 gallons to put on the weight thing to turn off the bomb. Now, in the movie, they went too quick and they were arguing back and forth, and so you didn't really get to see how they got to 4 gallons to begin with. So when I first watched the movie, I like riddles and math problems and stuff, so when we got to that, all I could think of is like, all right, how did they do that? And so I missed a couple of minutes of the movie after that because I was thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, you take the 5-gallon and you pour it into 3-gallon, and you get 2 gallons into 5-gallon. You pour out the 3-gallon, you pour the 2 gallons into the 3-gallon. Now you got 1 gallon left in here. So you fill up the 5-gallon and pour the 1 gallon into the 3 filled up, and now you got 4 gallons into 5-gallon. You place it down. And I was all proud of myself. I'm like, yeah. But then I had missed like two or 3 minutes of the next part of the movie because I was concentrating so hard on that riddle. But I loved it. I loved that part. I thought it was great. And I felt, proud of myself for figuring it out. Like I was super smart and shit. The simple point that cops used their badge number to play the lottery, I really liked that because it was something you could set up very quickly in the beginning. Just 2 lines, 3 lines. And it sets it up later for when he's in when John McClane's in the reserve and they're in the elevator and he notices his friend's badge, and so he just asks what was the lotto numbers, and no one played the lottery. That was a really good, simple, easy way of him figuring out that these were imposters and they're bad guys, instead of some complicated, long questioning thing or a surprise. It was more of quick and easy. You can get straight to the action of him killing everybody in the elevator. And it makes total sense. Another thing is McClane taught me, if you're going to steal a car, make sure it's an old car without any computer chips in it. Zeus just basically put a screwdriver in there and broke the lock and turned it on. But then, and it's totally believable, but then Zeus taught me never leave your bar of gold in the back seat. Not like I have a gold bar, but, he's like, dang it, I left it in the back seat. Just like Die Hard 2, McClane respects the blue-collar worker. He never looks down on him. And Jerry, the dump truck driver for the aqueduct, it was so awesome. He was full of information, but not like unbelievable information. I've known people like him that just pick up facts, like trivia facts all the time. And so they're just a plethora of basically useless information. But every once in a while, it becomes useful comes in handy. So, I'm full of useless information. It's never really come in handy, but I'm one of those people too. I'm pretty good at Trivia Pursuit, I guess. Haven't played it in years though. Now, when they got into the aqueduct and they had the dam burst, where they blew up the dam to try and kill McClane, that looked really cool, but the sequence of events of the dam burst, flooding the water of the aqueduct, dump truck surfing, being geysered out of the service entrance at the exact same time as Zeus is driving by to see it happen, which looked cool and funny. And the bad guys just happened to be there also. A lot of weird coincidences. Impossibility for all of that to happen at once. Impossible to surf a garbage truck and get geysered out of the hole, but just saying, like, all of that stuff happening at the same time, that's pretty impossible. But it gets us back to the action and the story quickly, so we suspend belief for it and just accept that. Then when you get back into the action and you got the car chase with the bad guys in the truck, and they cut the power brakes on the car, and he does the car spin while he's shooting at the bad guys. That was cool looking. I really like that. And again, practical effects. They did that as a stunt. Now, it was a rigged stunt, obviously, but it was two real cars doing the spinning and everything. And so it looked really cool. If you did that with CGI, even today, it would look, like in Wanted, when they did that in Wanted, or, I don't know, they do that in a bunch of movies. But it just doesn't look right unless it's a practical car stunt. So, always, again, use practical effects. Then they took the tow cable off of the truck and fish line to the boat crane, and they're climbing down the wire as the truck falls. They swing down and cut the henchman in half, and then fall to the boat. That would have killed him. But it looked cool. Now, there was a little bit of green screen in there of them falling, which looked cheesy, but it was 1995 again. Just like the 1990 Die Hard 2 with the ejection seat. The green screen wasn't very good. But that's the time period. I mean, it was the best effects they could do at the time, so you can't blame them too much. But the rest of that sequence was done practically, so much of it looked good and real that simple green screen of them falling, you can accept it. The joke after the henchman gets cut and you see them, John grabs the hands and he tells Samuel Jackson to grab the feet, and then he comes around so they're both going the same direction. I thought that was a funny little quick joke. Didn't distract too much from the sequence. You had to hide the henchmen so that they didn't know you were aboard, but there would be a lot of blood. So I don't know if it would help you stay hidden for very long. Even if the body's not there, there's a bunch of blood. Now, have you ever noticed that John McClane's way of sneaking around is with his mouth wide open? Like, I don't know why I didn't notice it before, but while I was watching it just now, I'm like, he does. He keeps his mouth wide open as he's sneaking around all the time. I don't know why he does that, but I found it funny. Now, I gotta say, the design of the bomb looks great. It looks very intimidating, not very realistic. There's no bombs that look like that. But it was cool looking. It's a cool design feature. I like that. Now, if an action movie was 100% realistic, it would not be very interesting. It would be pretty boring, actually. And in a way, every action movie is actually a present-day fantasy. So we just like any fantasy movie, we have to suspend belief to accept the story. So whenever I see an action movie, even though I want the practical effects to look real, because I don't, there isn't any magic in today, but I do want, I understand that it's a fantasy movie, even though it's an action movie. It's technically a fantasy movie because none of this stuff could actually happen in real life. But we want to accept it to go on with the fun. As long as the story is good. If the story is bad, then the action movie, it doesn't matter. The action parts don't matter, just like the new Point Break movie. The story was so bad that the cool action scenes, you just don't want to spend the money or watch it multiple times because it's not that special. And you can't have an 80s or 90s action movie without the heroes jumping from an explosion. I like that. And they did that well on the boat. Even though that was green screen, pretty bad green screen also, it's still, it's not an action movie unless they're jumping from an explosion. Now, Simon was thwarted by an aspirin bottle. Even though that's cheesy, it actually makes sense if they got I don't know if hotels do that, print the hotel name in the bottom of aspirin bottles, but it is a cool way of just giving the good guys their location so that you don't have to do some long, complicated way of tracking them down. It's like, oh my gosh, that's where they are. Okay, we get there, and then you get back to the action. And again, it is very satisfying to watch the bad guys blow up in an explosion. And still not as cool as Hans Gruber's fall. But, because that was just iconic. However, I do like seeing the bad guys explode. It's like a guttural satisfaction. Yeah! Kaboomy! Ah! Now, although this one is more unbelievable than Die Hard 2 was, to me it was more fun to watch and the story made more sense. Trying to free a general in Die Hard 2 when we have really no idea who this general is and why he's so important. In this one, they're trying to steal over $150 billion in gold bars and get revenge for Simon's brother Hans getting killed by McClane. So that storyline makes more sense. The motivations make more sense than Die Hard 2. So although this one is more unbelievable, it's a lot more fun to watch and it makes more sense. And the practical effects again. I'm kind of not looking forward to the next two because, well, more the fifth one. The next one I do like for other reasons. I don't like that it's PG-13, but I do like it overall. But they get into too much CGI, and then the action scenes lose their oomph, But way more fun. So that's my little review of Die Hard with a Vengeance. If if there were things you noticed or things you liked, didn't like, let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and I will see you guys on the next video.